We want to welcome everyone. We are so thrilled that you're with us today. This presentation is all about the first biological law, where you will learn the very shocking truth about the cause of disease. But first, our disclaimer. All right, and moving right on. I would like to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Catherine Little. So Kathy, can you tell us about yourself?
Thank you, Andy. Welcome, everyone. Very happy to be here. I graduated as a physical therapist back in 1980 from my University of Alberta in Edmonton, Canada. And I've worked in many places in the country, and actually I worked in Zimbabwe for a period of time in Africa. So over the years, I've collected more skill sets. I've expanded on the body, learned about the viscera, the craniosacral system, lymphatics. But it was in 2007 that I learned about German medicine, and that transformed everything, where that became the foundation of looking at the body. And then I have all these tools to help me in working with my clients. So it changed my world. So over to you, Andy, my colleague from the US that we've spent some time together and have known for a few years.
Thank you, Kathy. I am a traditional naturopath, and I had a successful wellness center in Maine when I first learned GNM. And of course, that changed my world as well, and started using it clinically right away, and it blew me away. I'm also a certified whole health educator, a patient advocate, and I have a master's degree from the University of Maine. I have traditional naturopath training in herbology and homeopathy and all kinds of different modalities that I also use. But once I learned GNM, I had to change how I used all of those, which was a really fascinating process to go through. So now what I do is I teach GNM online. I do virtual programs for lay people and for practitioners. All right, so moving on. We have a very robust agenda for the next 22 minutes or so, and we'll be covering all of these topics. Let's get right into the teaching. So Kathy, can you tell us how the discovery of the first biological law and GNM all began?
Sure. It's always a great honor to speak about Dr. Hammer and his amazing journey to uncover the natural biological laws of healing. So here's a picture of Dr. Hammer and his beloved son, Dirk Hammer. So back in August 18th, 1978, Dirk was accidentally but fatally shot. And about 4 months later, Dr. Hammer Sr. was diagnosed with a form of testicular cancer. Dr. Hammer was a happily married man. He loved his work, and his patients really loved him as well too. A very compassionate man. So he started to wonder if this tragic loss of his son might have something to do with his disease state. So as an internal medicine specialist, he had many cancer patients. So he walked into the wards and started asking his clients, his patients, what was going on or what had been going on prior to their diagnosis. And it seemed everybody had an interesting story and something to talk about. And then he was profoundly surprised when all the testicular cancer patients spoke about some level of a profound loss in their life prior to their diagnosis. So after many more years of research, he put together a postdoctorate thesis. And in 1981, he presented his findings to the medical faculty of the University of Tübingen, his first alma mater. And despite 4 successful court challenges, his findings have never been published or recognized by conventional medicine to this date. You see, once a paper is published, it then becomes part of the public domain and is available to the public. And this is unfortunately something that conventional medicine doesn't want. This is, a brief synopsis, but Andy, maybe can you tell us a little bit more about Dr. Hammer's research?
Absolutely. So he began seeing correlations, like Kathy said. Everyone with testicular cancer had experienced profound loss. He then analyzed their brain CT scans. Every single person in his clinic had a targeted ring formation, like a bullseye, in their brain in different areas on the brain scan. He realized that everyone who had experienced the same type of distress, like a profound loss prior to their diagnosis, all had the lesion in the same place in their brain. Then he looked at their current diagnoses and he realized that everyone with the circle in the same area in the brain with the same type of distress all had the same cancer diagnosis. So men who had experienced profound loss all had testicular cancer. This was true in 100% of his patients. There were no exceptions to any of the cancers they had. Thus, Dr. Hammer established that every disease, from the common cold to cancer to food intolerances to warts to a heart attack, is initiated by an unexpected conflict shock. This was a very unique and a very new way, a new approach to understanding disease. Dr. Hammer was really the first person to examine the brain as the origin of disease. So, Kathy, can you tell us what the first biological law is?
Yeah, sure, Andy. So I'll start by just reading on the screen. You can follow along. So the first biological law is really about every disease and symptom, which we call a significant biological special program, originates from an unexpected, highly acute, and isolating conflict shock that occurs simultaneously in the psyche, the brain, and on the corresponding organ. What does that mean? So in honor of his son, Dirk, who was fatally shot, he called this unanticipated stressful event a DHS, or for his son, Dirk Hammer syndrome, which we often just refer to as a conflict shock. So this DHS is a very personal incident, and it's completely conditioned by our past experiences, our vulnerabilities, our individual perceptions, and our values and beliefs. So what one person experiences can be completely different from another person based on their individual perceptions. So for examples here, we can see a sudden unexpected car accident right in front of our eyes. Whoa, oh my God, what happened? You can be all set to go party on a weekend and your boss comes in and says, oh, we need this done by Monday. Sudden, unexpected. Or you're having a conversation with your spouse and bang, something comes up and you're in a heated argument. Sudden, unexpected. So it's the conflict shock is emotionally distressing that you're not anticipating. And since it's unexpected, your body can't prepare ahead of time for it. And so that the unexpectedness makes it that your psyche is automatically sees it as a threat. So the significant biological special program is activated in times of this distress to help us survive. Following more of Dr. Hammer's research, he discovered that the psyche, the brain, and the organ constitute a single biological unit. Let's start unpacking this. Andy, how can you describe the psyche?
That's a good one. It's really important to understand Dr. Hammer's definition of the psyche. It's that part of your body that perceives and interprets the world around you, and thus it's the part that recognizes danger. The psyche is biological, and it includes the senses, which detect sensory data from our environment, like what we touch, what we say, what we hear, what we smell, what we see, and that all gets transmitted through your nervous system to your brain. And these all act simultaneously, all together. So keep in mind, this is not Freud's definition of the psyche. Dr. Hammer was a physician, so his definition of the psyche is biological, not mental. So again, it's that part of your body that recognizes danger in your environment. So Kathy, why would our bodies start these programs? What would be the purpose of these?
Yes. Why? Every dis-ease is part of a significant biological special program. And it's created to assist, as it says here, to assist humans and other animals in resolving a biological conflict. As Andy has described, our psyche's reaction is instantaneous. And so there's no thinking with our mind or emotions. So just because you're a worrier doesn't mean you have to have a worry conflict. No, it's that instantaneous moment that how we react. And so it is not psychological, it is biological. And this is a huge distinction from conventional and alternative medical thinking. Yeah. And really, a big gem of the whole understanding of German medicine. So Andy, can you further distinguish this difference between general stress that our body can have or a significant special biological program?
Yes, and that's important to understand because general stress and conflict activity look a lot alike. So when you have the impact and you're upset, that will look a lot like regular stress. However, stress doesn't shock the nervous system the way an unexpected event does. The stress might build and build, like our guy on the left here. You feel the stress building and building, and then you blow, right? It's not necessarily unexpected as it builds and builds. It isn't pleasant, that's for sure. The important thing to realize here is that every time you're upset or distressed, it doesn't mean you have activated a biological program. It could simply be that you have general stress. And being stressed depletes our bodies of energy, which of course doesn't help our overall health. Let's look more at what Dr. Hammer discovered. He looked at CT scans. And Kathy, can you describe what he saw?
Yes, so in these pictures of CT scans, you can see these orange dotted circles. And those are indicating these imprints in the brain from these conflict shocks that we're talking about. And on both cases, you can see that there's more than one circle in the CT. So Andy, let's explain, what does it mean or indicate if you have more than one imprint in your brain?
This is a great one. I love this because this is just so important, what Dr. Hammer discovered. Kathy, it means that these people have experienced more than one conflict shock and have turned on more than one biological program. It's what allopathy would call metastases. Dr. Hammer discovered that secondary cancers are not caused by spreading cancer cells. Instead, they are the result of simultaneous or additional conflict shocks that are often experienced at the moment of the diagnosis shock. So let's look at the common ones. According to the National Cancer Institute, the most common metastatic cancers are those that have, quote, spread to the lungs, the bones, and the liver. When we understand GNM, we know exactly why these are the top three so-called metastatic cancers. The lung program is biologically linked to a death-fright conflict, and it's most often the result of a diagnosis or a prognosis shock perceived as a death sentence. That's when we're sitting in the doctor's office and we hear our doctor tell us that we have cancer and we're shocked. We immediately think, oh, I'm going to die. The death-fright conflict starts the program, which assists us in processing more oxygen to better help us survive this shock we just experienced. The bone program is biologically linked to feeling less than. It's a self-devaluation. We may feel devastated. We always thought we were so healthy, and now that illusion has been shattered because we think there's something wrong with us. The last one is a liver program, which is biologically linked to either a starvation or an existence conflict. It usually has to do with food or money that we use to buy food. If you're really sick, how will you still provide for your family? Or how will you pay for hospital bills and food? all of those things that go through our mind. The important thing to remember is that there's nothing random in the body. Everything has a purpose. That's a very brief look at secondary cancers, which is certainly a lot to think about, and you'll hear more about this later in the program. Kathy, let's talk about a biological program that is important for our attendees to be familiar with.
Okay, we're going to talk about the kidney collecting tubule, and this won't be the only time we'll talk about it. But so you can see in the picture, there's different colors for the different parts of the kidney. And they all have their own function. And so thus they have their own conflict. So each part is a different germ layer based on embryological, like how we create our organs. So each color has its own significant biological special program, which is again a big distinction from conventional and alternative medicine. So KCT for short, kidney collecting tubules, represents what we call the fish out of water program. And it's the program where we get the symptom of water retention. The knowledge of this program is critical for our health because it's very common. So it can run as a solo program and you can retain water, or if another program is in the healing phase, that water retention will go to that healing organ, which makes healing much worse and can become a matter of life and death. So this knowledge, just this program, the knowledge of this program, could save countless lives of people in and out of hospital around the world. So we'll get more to that later. So Andy, can you talk about another aspect of the first biological law that's important to know?
Yes, I would be glad to. And it's important to know if you are right or left dominant. So every being has a dominant side, humans and animals alike. The side of you that is dominant, left or right, determines whether the bullseye in the brain, the hammer focus, the imprint, impacts on the right or left side of the brain, and thus whether or not a symptom manifests on the right or left side of the body. Dr. Hammer realized there was more meaning to handedness, and he called this principle the principle of laterality. And it reads, a right-handed person responds to a conflict with his or her mother or child with the left side of the body, and to a conflict with a partner or anyone else in the world with the right side. This is reversed for left-handed people. So again, if you're right-sided, you're right dominant, any symptoms that you have on the left side of your body will involve either your mother or your child for the most part, or if something impacts on the right side of your body, it will be about your partner or somebody else in the world, and that is reversed for left-handed people. This is important to know, so you'll start to understand the language of your body. Let's say you're right dominant and your left shoulder hurts. It means you had a conflict shock, an incident with your mother or your kids. If your right shoulder hurts, it means the conflict is related to your partner or anyone else in the world, not your mother or child. So you can see it gives you knowledge right away about what your conflict shock was about. What was that distress you just experienced? We've given you some basics now of the first biological law, so let's wrap this up by talking about therapy. Kathy, what is GNM therapy?
Yes, this is an often asked question. And for me, as it says, German medicine therapy, it's really because it paints the big picture of disease. So it educates us so fully about all aspects of the disease process. It allows you to know what conflict is related to your significant biological special program, what phase your significant biological program is in, and what symptoms to expect, and how to manage your symptoms. GNM education is so extensive and precise that it gives you so much support in dealing with your life's conflicts and managing them so that you don't have to go into a chronic disease process. and you can avoid many potential life-threatening situations. GNM knowledge really decreases our fear and anxiety about any part of the disease process. So really, we have to remember that this is a biologically based natural science. Andy, how does knowing GNM help you with your clients?
Oh, that's a great question, Kathy, especially for any of the practitioners who are watching this. It's important to know that most of us don't use CT scans. We don't need to because we understand what is occurring just by knowing a person's symptoms. So what I do is I always learn what my client's symptoms are. That informs me what biological program is running, what the conflict shock was that they experienced, how the program will progress and resolve. This is super empowering information. It helps people get out of fear, or at least to reduce it. And it helps to reduce the kidney collecting tubule program that Kathy just told us about. And then I work with my clients on how to support their psyches and their bodies to finish these programs once and for all. That's what I do. Kathy, what do you do? How does knowing GNM help you with your clients?
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, ditto what you're saying for sure. And maybe I'll just add to, we really learn to dance with our clients because we never know what's in somebody's psyche. We barely know what's in our own psyche. So every client really is different. And, sometimes I may just start with introducing the concept that symptoms are not the disease, but part of a healing process, which is not generally what conventional medicine is saying. So that in itself can really bring down the stress and completely have them look at their process of what's going on, that there's not something wrong in their body. Actually, their body's helping them deal with something. And then there may be the client that comes in who has a greater understanding of GNM or maybe a little more out of the box thinker and potentially in a dangerous program like the liver common bile duct program. And they're already jaundiced, fully jaundiced, and they're heavy into the healing process. And so I then go, deeper in, and like what you're saying, so that they really have to understand that they're in the healing process, and it needs to be monitored closely with the KCT and everything to make sure they go through it without dangerous consequences.
Right.
So, yeah, we really work client by client, but the depth of this knowledge shows us where we need to go and how we can go.
Kathy, I love that you said it's a dance, because it is very much a dance. And as practitioners, we learn how to dance with our clients to support them. Every client is different, like Kathy said, and every opportunity to engage with clients is different. But GNM informs us in what we do, which is very empowering. So there is a brief look at the first biological law. You have 4 more laws coming up, which is great. This is a little bit more about us and our contact information. We hope you have enjoyed this, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you, Kathy, for doing this.
Okay, thanks everybody. This is information that needs time and respect to digest. Enjoy your journey. Bye.
Bye-bye.